Well, season 3 of The Mandalorian came and went pretty quickly. This was a weird 8-week journey. My attitude changed by the episode. I was almost tempted to make a weekly video discussing each episode, but I wanted to wait until I got the full picture. Star Wars storytelling was once again frustrating. Now don't get me wrong, there were a lot of good moments, but then there were some times where I wondered, why is this such a big focal point in the story, or why are they going here in this direction? So in today's video, I want to talk about the mixed bag that season 3 provided us with. I'll admit, I was interested in most of the plot points throughout this season, but as always, it seems like the writers prioritized the wrong stuff when it comes to what should be focused on the most. We all knew the direction this season was supposed to go in, and it did make it there by the end, but the issues came from just a lot of bouncing around. The focus changed a lot from character to character, and the story bounced around a lot based off of locations. 1 minute we're on Nevarro, then we're on Mandalore, then we're on Nevarro again, then we're at the Mandalorian hideout on a few occasions, and then we spend almost an entire episode on Coruscant. I think the most controversial thing this season was the character focus changing a lot. Din Djarin took a back seat until the finale, basically. We did get a few minutes of Grogu being the focus with some character development with his training. Some people claim he didn't have any. I think he did have some. So much good stuff happened in the final 2 episodes compared to what happened in the first 6 episodes. The character that got a lot of the spotlight was Bo-Katan, and personally I didn't think it was such a bad thing, and I'll touch more on her in a moment. We got that super long story in episode 3 about Dr. Pershing and Elia Kane, the former Imperial officer. There was a lot of hints to the return of Moff Gideon, but waiting to show him and see what he was up to until almost the very end was disappointing in my opinion. The main storyline going into this season was about Din's redemption and the return to Mandalore. And we did see all of this, but Din's redemption felt rushed in my opinion, and the Mandalorian storylines were chopped up and sprinkled throughout all 8 episodes, and we got all these little side stories. I really just wish they would have spent a lot more time on Mandalore, going on an adventure, discovering the planet, discovering that, hey, the Imperials are still here. And it was not until episodes 7 and 8, those final 2 episodes, where the show really began to focus on them, the Mandalorians on Mandalore trying to claim it. I think the issue comes down to the writers wanting to tell so many stories but not having enough time to do it. I've said this time and time again, why only allow yourself to have 8 episodes if you want to tell so many stories? And if you're going to keep the season short, then why not have a 50-minute runtime average throughout the entire season? The longest episode of the season was episode 3, that was the Dr. Pershing episode, and it was 59 minutes long. Now granted, subtract 3 or 4 minutes from credits, but still to be over 55 minutes long, I think that might be possibly the longest episode that we've had in the 3 years of The Mandalorian. And I'm gonna be honest, I would have rather have seen Moff Gideon's escape. I wanted to see more of him and his plan. They hinted to his return a lot, and I think they just wasted his potential. And I say that because Giancarlo Esposito is a great actor. If you've watched Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul, then you know how good he is, especially at playing a villain character. Now, I was glad to see him be a badass, even if it was for a little bit. I'll admit at first I was worried about his return because Din smacked him around a lot in the season 2 finale. Gideon is an officer, not a warrior, but his new suit gave him the ability to hold his own for the most part. Now of course at the end of the day it's tough to go 1 versus 3 against 2 Mandalorians and 1 force-wielding creature. But we did get a glimpse of his cloning operation, and we saw some of the major players that are working with Gideon, and most importantly Thrawn, as the Empire is looking to rebuild and fight the New Republic for control of the galaxy again, which is going to lead to the Ahsoka show and the Mandoverse movie that Dave Filoni is going to write, many years down the line. So they're building up to future content. But that leads me to my biggest source of frustration with this season. That Moff Gideon stuff was cool. The Praetorian Guards were cool. Grogu training under the Mandalorian way was cool. Seeing the Mythosaur was cool. I can make a decent sized list of cool things that we saw in this season. I just love the word cool apparently. However, a lot of these moments were short-lived. Now let me offer up some praise because this is of course a mixed bag review after all. First off, I want to give a huge shout out to Katee Sackhoff. She has played the role of Bo-Katan so well. She's amazing. I also love the passion and the energy she is bringing to the franchise. You could see it in the interviews, and you could see it all over social media. And as much as I love, I'll give you an example. I love Harrison Ford and his Han Solo character, of course. One of my favorite characters in Star Wars. But it actually frustrates me to see how annoyed Harrison gets with Star Wars. Dude, you are one of the reasons why Star Wars is so big. You are one of the reasons why Star Wars is where it's at today and why it's so popular. You played one of the first and one of the greatest characters in the history of the franchise. So it's refreshing to see someone like Katee who loves the role and loves being a part of the franchise and interacting with the fans and all that. She's just been nothing but a source of positivity and happiness throughout this even controversial season. And here's my hot take. Bo-Katan is better than Cara Dune. Now don't get me wrong, Cara was an awesome character. I thought Gina Carano played the role very well. I'm not here to talk about whether or not Gina should have been fired or was she right or wrong for that situation, but I will tell you that Bo-Katan fits a lot better in this story. It sucks we won't see Cara in her show, The Rangers of the New Republic, but Cara does not have the background and quite frankly the importance that Bo has in not only this show, but in Star Wars as a whole. So I will take Bo-Katan over Cara Dune any day. And while I do not agree with so many characters and stories sidestepping around Din this season, I was perfectly happy with Bo getting a bigger role, and honestly her team-ups and some of her adventures with Din and Grogu were pretty cool. The last 2 episodes were my favorite. I liked the fact that the story was being narrowed down and finally just focusing on what matters the most, is the Mandalorians looking to take back Mandalore. The combat scenes were awesome, Bo-Katan and Din fought like badasses. Now Grogu controlling IG was a little bit weird, but it got better I thought, in my opinion, once he got out of the droid and was jumping around and using his Force abilities. The Praetorian Guards were awesome as well. The armor looked a little better compared to The Last Jedi. It was good back in that movie, but I think they got the perfect upgrade, especially those helmets. And honestly, I got a Clone Wars vibe with all this fighting in the finale when the Mandalorians were fighting with the Imperial troopers in the air when everybody was with their jetpacks. That reminded me a lot of the fighting on Mandalore back during the Clone Wars, and really anytime there was any like aerial combat and jetpacks involved in Clone Wars episodes. The overall vibe in the finale was amazing. I thought the visual effects were great, the music was awesome, mix all that in with the combat, and it made for a fantastic ending to the season. It felt like a movie, honestly, especially when the cruiser crashes into the base and Grogu uses the Force to shield himself, Bo, and Din to protect them all from the fire. That was one of the greatest scenes in the show, and I think it may go down as one of the best scenes that we're ever going to see in the show. It seems like the show was very interesting when it took itself seriously, and I say this because I have to address the Episode 6 controversy. The adventure that Bo, Din, and Grogu went on was cool overall. I always love seeing droids, especially battle droids and super battle droids. I thought that was a unique detective story involving the droids, but I did of course roll my eyes when I realized that, hey, this adventure is going to take up a lot of time and it's going to be the main focus, and we're going to end up seeing the group meet up with Bo's old buddies with like 5 minutes left in the episode. And sure enough, that happened. Now the biggest storyline and the biggest part of the controversy really comes from the 3 guest stars we got: Jack Black, Lizzo, and Christopher Lloyd. Many were not happy with this. People thought, that Christopher Lloyd should have played a different character. I think it was okay. I even laughed when I saw Jack Black. I'm not gonna lie. I think Jack Black and Christopher Lloyd, the unique roles they have played in the past, they could, replicate that in Star Wars. I feel like Lizzo is the wild card in this situation. I'm not really sure what's going on here, like why she had to be in it. I really don't know why, some of this stuff happened, but honestly, I really wasn't that mad about these 3 showing up and the characters they did play. However, I do think this is just yet another example of the creators prioritizing fun and random plot points over what really matters to the overall story, what people really want to see. What we wanted to see this season was more development from Grogu and Din. We wanted to see what Bo-Katan was going to do if she was going to lead Mandalore. We wanted to see all this Mandalorian content. And again, we got it, but I just feel like it was chopped up and sprinkled like throughout the entire season. I think it needed to be a little bit more concise and focused with its story and not really branch out as much as it did. So here's my final thoughts on the finale. I liked most of it. Everything was solid in terms of combat, story, and quality of production. I am mad that the Darksaber broke, I'm not gonna lie. The damn thing wasn't used enough and it was really cool. And for some reason, they decided to break it despite its significance in the franchise's lore. And I just love how cool weapons and items that are meaningful in Star Wars are just treated like literal props and get discarded after a short while. It really blows my mind. Also, we did get a nice build up to a high stakes situation in this finale, and if I'm being honest, we got a soft landing. Moff Gideon died. Okay, we defeated the villain, but again, I think it would have been a bigger deal if we got to see him more early on in the season. I really was interested in what he was doing on Mandalore at this base. I was really interested to see what him and the other Imperial warlords were planning. I just hate getting these sample sizes of content that's really cool and what I ultimately care more about than Lizzo being in the show. And it also turned out that there really was no spies other than the officer on Coruscant. The week that we just went through waiting between episodes 7 and 8 was awesome because there were a ton of theories out there. People were talking, wondering who could be the spy, who might have betrayed the Mandalorians, who else might die. And again, it just really wasn't, there was nothing there. Also, nobody else on the good guy side died other than Paz Vizsla, who his death was epic and it was tough, but again, the high stakes buildup led to a very soft landing, and even though it's not bothering me that much, I really do understand why there's criticism out there from other fans that watched the show and were kind of expecting another spectacular season 2-esque finale, which I thought it was still pretty good. Maybe emotionally it wasn't as high up there as, when Luke came to get Grogu, but it was still pretty good, at least in my opinion. And hey, I'll admit, I'm kind of glad that everybody lived. I'm glad that the armorer wasn't the spy or anyone else, in a way, because honestly, I just wanted to see this redemption arc get fulfilled. So many groups of people have failed in Star Wars, especially the Jedi. I wanted to see a worthwhile comeback story, and The Mandalorian's got that. I wish I could have got a little bit more content and saw them go through this epic journey without these side distractions, but overall, they got to the end goal. And the best part of the ending was knowing that Din and Grogu are going back out on adventures together, and it appears that the focus could be back on them completely. They will be bounty hunters for the New Republic on a case-by-case basis. And I'm not going to hold my breath, but please, let Season 4 focus on them. I am cool with a variety of adventures, but Din deserves more time in the spotlight. He's lost a handful of weapons in his ship, and he lost a lot of screen time, or important time at least, you could call it that, in this season, and he's just such a badass fighter like we saw in the finale. Let's get him some trademark weapons again, so he could be this ultimate badass bounty hunter with Grogu next season. So overall, I would rate this season a 7 out of 10. It had a lot of cool moments and a lot of memorable scenes. I do wish the storytelling wasn't so controversial and all over the place, but I think the finale at least sets them up to get back on track for season 4. Again, despite the storytelling issues, I would say it was still a cool and entertaining story. It wasn't the best season of The Mandalorian so far, but you know what? I'm excited for season 4, and I think they really could get back on track if they really just focus in on ultimately what we really care about. And overall, I'm glad we got to see live-action Mandalorian stuff, and personally, Bo-Katan was the true highlight of this season. Well, thanks for watching the video, everybody, and shout out to everyone who is a subscriber of the channel. Like the video and sub for more if you haven't yet. Also, you can find me on TikTok and Twitter at analyzethis_YT. Thanks, and take care.